Okay, welcome emerging leader sponsors to the May sponsor update and alignment call. Really excited to have you all with us to talk about some great best practices and things that we have going on with the Emerging Leader Program for both the class of 2018 and the class of 2019. And I am sharing my screen, so hopefully everybody is able to see that. Want to take a moment and welcome some of our new emerging leader sponsors who this is likely their first alignment call. So you can see those individuals highlighted in green on the slide in front of us, which is available in the deck attached to the meeting notice. Just an update too, if anybody is looking to rotate or change roles, bring in somebody new as an emerging leader sponsor, please let me know so we can help make arrangements and really ensure that we're getting the right sponsors enrolled to support the emerging leaders. And I'll just note that a best practice has evolved that having two sponsors at each site is a really great approach, where we have an SLT member who is kind of that liaison between the SLT and the emerging leader group, and then we have maybe a level 4 manager or something around that level that is an alumni that can also really support the emerging leaders and understand what they have going on. The purpose of this call, as I said, we welcome the new emerging leader sponsors, but also want to go over a couple of the sponsor roles and responsibilities now that we're into the new program redesign, and then would love to hear from any of our more seasoned sponsors that have some best practices and lessons learned they can share about different elements of the program. This is all listed out in the program guide. We will be sending out a revised version of that includes updated agendas that reflect our curriculum for the class of 2019. So same content, but it's just changing up the order a little bit, still focused on keeping us in a foundation of our core competencies and some of the Exelon values of diversity, inclusion, and innovation. During this call, we'll also take some time to share with you what we have going on current status with class of 2018 who are in their capstone period and how you can support them, as well as aligning on what's going on with the class of 2019, our second class who's going through the new program design. So really excited about that and what we're calling the Cadillac version of the program. So in terms of some of the best practices and lessons learned for sponsors, for those of you who are seasoned or new to this program, for conferences, it's really beneficial for you to be in attendance for as much of the conference as you possibly can. Obviously understanding if you need to step out for calls and meetings throughout. But the value that the emerging leaders get from having you there for a couple of different reasons. So one being that you're able to have those pre-conference conversations and the post-conference conversations with them. For whoever just joined, please go on mute. Thanks. So when we have the pre-conference meetings with them out at the sites and those post-conference meetings, actually being there and being a part of the discussion is a really great way to ensure that you're having a very rich dialogue with them. And then I think more importantly that we really look to you at the conferences to be able to jump in with your own leadership experiences that support the discussions as appropriate. We build some white space into the agenda so that we have that freedom to have dialogues that maybe take us off course a little bit, but those are some of the most impactful places that our emerging leaders are learning. So attending the conferences, being present and engaged while you're there and jumping in is best practice that we have learned from our emerging leaders who are providing us with this feedback. We do have our talent management, organizational development working team for emerging leaders who is shaping the agendas for all of these programs. And one of the new segments we're including is a sponsor story. So this is something where we would be reaching out to you. We've already reached out to a couple of you already to engage in some of those leader-led discussions in a more formal and facilitated way. And that could be the sponsor story segment, or it could be actual co-facilitation or lead facilitation of a content module. Another new addition from, I would say this is a lesson learned from the last year, is that we're carving out time for the sites at the end of each conference to do a site/group post-conference huddle real quick, just a few minutes. What did you learn? How are we going to apply it? What's the impact? What are some key actions we're taking as next steps, and who's going to take them? For example, it could be, when's the next site meeting? Is there more that we want to learn about, where we want to bring in a guest speaker and do a lunch and learn? Is there a particular professional development workshop we think we should attend to learn more about this? So that'll give them a chance to, while the momentum is hot, that you're able to get them engaged and keep them forward looking to how they can really get the most out of this experience. And then those pre and post conference discussions that we already talked about. So I'll just pause there and see, are there any questions or even just thoughts or experiences that the sponsors have they can share in terms of how you feel you can best support the conferences? Okay.
To accept and set message options, press 1. To replay, press 2. To erase and re-record, press 3. To continue recording, press 4. To cancel, press the star key. To repeat this menu, press 0.
Okay, hopefully there's no more of that. So on-site support, as I mentioned earlier.
Are you still there? To accept and set message options, press 1. To replay, press 2. To erase and re-record, press 3. To continue recording, press 4. To cancel, press the star key. To repeat this menu, press 0.
Okay, I press the star key. Hopefully she goes away. So on site, your role
Are you still there? To accept and set message options, press 1. To replay, press 2. To erase and re-record, press 3. To continue recording, press 4. To cancel, press the star key. To repeat this menu, press 0.
I am not in control of pushing the buttons for her, apparently, because I pressed 4 and star.
Sorry you're having trouble. Please try again later.
All right, we will. So on-site, sorry about that, guys. On-site support, as we talked about in the program guide, really making sure that you're taking the opportunity to keep the senior leadership team and the emerging leader managers aware of everything that they're learning through the program, the conference content, keeping it relevant. It's such a great way to spread out the responsibility and the burden of ensuring that they're getting the right opportunities. So when, for example, you're at an SLT staff meeting and there's an opportunity that comes up that would be really cool for an emerging leader in their capstone period, that would be the opportunity to let them know, let your peers know on the SLT, hey, we have this emerging leader, they're really focusing on this XYZ competency, this is a great opportunity for them, here's what I think they would get out of it, and be that advocate for them. And then continuing to support that site learning and those experiences driven by the emerging leaders. And then, just general support, providing them with feedback, overseeing the mentoring relationships, connecting with them on their development, but also connecting with their manager to make sure that there is that element of alignment, and then participating in their 360 assessments as part of that feedback mechanism and helping them then coordinate their capstone presentation. So not doing it for them, not scheduling it for them, but providing some guidance that may get them pointed in the right direction and jumping in to help them out if they're spinning their wheels a little bit. Anyone want to jump in and add any other best practices or lessons learned that we haven't talked about or may not be in the program guide?
Kim, this is, no, I don't think it's any, this is Jim at Oyster Creek. I don't think this is anything new. I just want to re-emphasize the couple areas that I see most beneficial, at least at Oyster, is we have a routine employee development council. So we take the opportunity to bring normally 2 emerging leaders into that meeting to discuss the learnings that they've had, whether it's post-conference or it could have been a project coordinator role that they took on, just to make sure that that provides an opportunity for face time, for them to the rest of the senior team. And then, some of the core processes like talent maps, I just saw a lot of improvement in that arena last year, and just want to make sure we continue with that. So when we put together talent maps for folks, we're including the emerging leaders, and that just helps put a framework together of how we're going to support them, and it gives an opportunity again for all the rest of the team at the site to see where we plotted those individuals and where some of their opportunities could be, and it's just a good vehicle to formalize that a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. The Employee Development Council is such a great way to where they're not only getting the experiences, but they're getting to actually practice some of the communication skills that we talk about in the program, where they have to know their audience, maybe practice some good storytelling and make the connections for the audience about how their experience is supporting the business. So that's a great way to help them prepare for their capstone. Thank you for that, Jim.
This is something completely separate from the booklet and everything, and not part of the program, but at LaSalle, something we've done now. We've done it once, and we're planning our next one, is we take our emerging leaders out for a team building activity, because most of the time they're working together, but they actually don't have time to sit and talk about each other or learn about the other people. So we take them off site, do team building activities, and just kind of like foster the teamwork between them, since they're probably going to be working together and progressing, as a group throughout the leadership ranks. So we just take that opportunity to take them off site. That gives us sponsors time to get to know them better, but just something I'd share.
Yeah, that's great, Rachel. Thank you. And at this first conference, actually, for the class of 2019, the first GenCo conference, in the first module that we'll talk about, we cover, it's Emerging Leader 101 and Best Practices for Success. We actually bring back an alumni to come out and help us out with that presentation and discussion. And one of the things that we spend quite a bit of time talking about is how critical it is to get the most out of your experience. You have to be vulnerable. You have to trust the people that you're with in this program, because it's a cohort. And realistically, this cohort of emerging leaders, if my dream for this would be that they rise up and this is a future group of executives one day, and they're in it together, and they're in it together from this program forward. So establishing that trust through those informal events is an awesome way to build the relationship. So thank you for that. And hopefully some of the LaSalle emerging leaders will even bring that up during that presentation in the next couple weeks. Thanks. Anyone else? Okay. So I'll move on here in terms of where we are with the class of 2018. So this is the class that just had their last conference in January. They're in their capstone period right now from January through June. And they have a deliverable to complete their capstone presentations in front of an executive audience by June 30th. Our recommendation is they don't do it before April 1st. So that time has passed. Hopefully everyone is just in the midst of getting that scheduled or preparing for the already scheduled date now. The idea, again, with that capstone presentation is that they get their 360 debrief, which should already be done. They're able to relate what they learned to their mentoring experience and some practical application opportunities, and then be able to communicate to an executive audience, what did they learn, how did they learn it, how did they apply it, and what was the impact to the business, the ROI. And so, again, that should be not just with site executives who know these people, but you guys can really help them get in front of a group of off-site leaders where they're getting exposure and visibility to a group of executives that they may not otherwise have an opportunity to get in front of. This was something back at the beginning when we were doing redesign of this program that our senior VPs said, I want to be able to look these people in the eye, the emerging leaders, and have them tell me what they got out of the program and why it was valuable for us to invest that in them. So this is that opportunity for them, and it's really important that they're supported and putting their best foot forward. So between now and June 30th, they should be getting those complete. And then the only other action they would have is we do an end of program survey now to gauge overall success of the program, and also just any lessons learned that would be incorporated in planning for the next class, which would be class of 2020, as crazy as that sounds.
Kim, June 30th is the date for that? That surprises me, because we were targeting October. Because I thought it was a 6-month capstone period.
It is. It's 6 months from January through June. So if, that's the guidance. If there are restrictions, an outage, or some complications that cause it to be delayed, obviously you just work through that with your TMOD person, not optimal. But obviously, we have to be flexible with them to ensure that they are going to be able to do everything they need to do to prepare.
Okay, understand. All right, we'll work to move it up. and we might not make June, but we can certainly do earlier than October. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And again, this is the first class of 2018 that's fully embedded in this newly designed 18-month program. So, if you have any hiccups or bumps along the road where you feel like there's a recommended change that we should consider in terms of timing of certain things, certainly let us know too, and we'll just try and make sure that we're continuing to improve.
Okay. Yep. No problem. I just wish I knew so that I understood, and it's nothing. Our outage, I think we would account for an outage would be my only feedback. I feel,
Mm-hmm. Got it. Thanks.
Thank you.
So when the emerging leaders in the class of 2018, as they're wrapping up their program, we do want to have a celebration for them in the form of a graduation event. It's probably not going to be quite as swanky as last year due to all the cost optimization. Plus the feedback from them is that they kind of just want to have a little bit of fun versus a stuffy event. So after the August emerging leaders for the class of 2019, so the class of 2019 at their August networking event, we will invite the class of 2018 emerging leaders back to join that networking event and do something to celebrate their graduation. So it'll be the mentors from the class of 2019 and the mentees together from the class of 2019. So those dates are in the West, it's August 15th out at Cantera, and then in the East, it's August 22nd in Newark, Delaware. Which is right off of I-95. It's a pretty central location. The attendees, again, would be both classes of emerging leaders. All of you as the sponsors would be invited to your requisite region, and then some senior executives will also be invited. During that time, we do intend to have a couple of emerging leaders who really stood out as an extraordinary impact to present their capstones as representatives of their class of 2018 to the senior executives. So that'll give a chance for anybody in that executive level group who maybe didn't get to see an emerging leader capstone presentation at the site level at an NSRB or an MRM or whatever, they'll have the opportunity then to see it at the graduation. So if as you're going through the next few weeks, months, between now and June, I guess July, before the August conference, you have somebody that you strongly recommend, be considered for that. Again, great visibility opportunity. We're really looking for people who can represent the Emerging Leader Program in a very positive light. Not everyone obviously will get selected, but we do keep a list of any emerging leaders who really stood out to invite them to come back to speak as alumni to the next class of emerging leaders, similar to what I referred to where we're bringing an alumni back for the Emerging Leader 101 and Best Practices presentation at this first class in May. So any questions about what's going on with the class of 2018? Either questions or input from sponsors on how that group is doing. Any best practices or lessons learned from the class of 2017 that would be important to note for this class experience? All right. So moving on to the class of 2019, these are the dates. And again, this PowerPoint is in the meeting notice. So you should have these as well as other communications sent out previously. But these are the dates of all of the Emerging Leader Conferences for the class of 2019, both East and West, and the locations that are identified. The January 2019 dates are not solid yet until we get the corporate calendar, which I'm sure you all know is in the October-November timeframe, but we'll look to get those dates finalized as quickly as possible. The only, I would say, caveat to this is we do realize the Innovation Expo is, I think it's August 15th, and that does conflict with the conference out at Cantera in the West, which would also be their graduation. So the class of 2018 graduation. So we're just kind of talking to those emerging leaders, seeing if anybody plans to go, what the impact might be if we need to potentially change that date. So just something to be aware of. And again, this visual here does also outline the trajectory, if you will, of the conferences, how we roll from understanding the business and their role in that, to leadership of self, to evolution of leader, and then to leadership of others. And then similar to the class of 2018, the class of 2019 will have their capstone period from January 2019 until June 2019, and then graduate in June 2019, hence why they are the class of 2019. So for the May conference, May 15th and 16th at Cantera and May 30th and 31st at Coatesville, this is an overview of the agenda for both of those days. So you have that included in the deck if you want to take a closer look at that. We did also send it out, and we have tapped whoever is available to support some of these, like I said earlier, the sponsor story or some of the modules themselves. And then, as always, we do have a networking event from 5:30 to 7:30 local time, the evening of day one that we would love for you to be at. It's at Maggiano's in Naperville in the West on May 15th, and at PJ Wellahan's in Downingtown on May 30th in the East. And you'll see in here also, as we do with every conference, we started off with an opportunity for reflection. So that actually shows up at 3 o'clock on day one, where they'll have a chance to think back to what they learned at the corporate conference and how they applied that. And then at the end of day two, that new emerging leader and sponsor huddle time, that 15 minutes is carved out so that you have an opportunity to figure out your next steps and any actions you want to take out of this conference to continue building upon the learnings. The other thing I do want to call out is that a change for this class is that we are moving the DISC assessment up from, I think it was the third conference last year, to the first conference this year. And then what we'll actually have an opportunity to do is look back at that and use it, looking at the results through different lenses all throughout the program. And so our team has reached out to you to ask sponsors who needs to take that assessment, because we would love for you to have yours in hand and be able to participate in those conversations as well with the emerging leaders and share that leader perspective. So if you have not already gotten back to Anne-Marie Harris, she is the team lead for emerging leaders now for the class of 2019, and she will hook you up with that DISC assessment if you have not already done so. Any questions about the May conference for the class of 2019? Or anyone on the emerging leader team that wants to add something I may have missed?
Hey, Kim, this is Jim again. Just one point of note with the unique nature of what's going on at Oyster Creek. Obviously, there'll be people moving out from Oyster Creek, and I know I have one EL in June that I believe's from he's going to Peach Bottom. So it'd probably be worthwhile for me to send out, and I believe it might be just one, maybe two, just so we can communicate those folks are going to be shifting to a different station so they can start to be included in with that sponsor.
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. Thanks for bringing that up. So for Oyster Creek and then next year TMI, I actually did work with Kaylin, and I will work with Jenny Bivens at TMI to do the same thing, but to assess the class, both classes, mentors and mentees, to see what actions may need to occur, and then where do we want to maybe make some connections for them as they're transferring to new jobs after decommissioning, to make some of those connections and make them feel welcomed and get off on the right foot with their new emerging leader site team or corporate team. So I can follow up with you offline, Jim. I have that list of where everybody's going and what those actions are. And I think Kaylin also has an action to follow up with you and ask you to follow up with the
sponsors. Okay. Hello. Did I lose you? Anybody on?
I can hear you.
Kim, didn't we?
It looks like she's adding the audio, so she might be working through it.
Yeah, I see things clicking along here. So don't call her name right now. Would be good.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Headset fail. Pros and cons to technology. Okay, yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Jim. And like I said, for those of you who are at other primarily east sites, Kennett, Peach Bottom, and Limerick, I think, heads up that Jim will be reaching out to you. Okay. Anything else about the May conference? All right. So one thing maybe to consider, Jim, is when we go through the emerging leader and sponsor huddle, depending on transfer dates, that may be an opportunity for anybody who is transferring from the class of 2019 to maybe even just go ahead and meet with their new site team.
Yeah, actually, because I'm on vacation this upcoming one, so I think I'm going to deliberately go out and make sure that those folks, I'll speak with them and have them tie in with their new sponsor.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, so last slide here. This is just a recap of the things that we've talked about throughout this call. So actions for you, so you can see it all in one place. Ensure you have those conference dates on your calendar, but no need to register an LMS. That is only for emerging leaders. I will just plan that everybody is there unless you indicate otherwise. And then, and please do so in writing via email. I have the memory of a goldfish, so telling me verbally may not always work. Completing the DISC assessment for yourselves if you've not already done so, and supporting any of that emerging leader reflection and post-work from the corporate conference in March, as well as the pre-work for the May conference. Continuing to share and sponsor best practices and lessons learned, including how to advocate for your emerging leaders at your locations. And then, as I mentioned, we are going to be asking for more leader-led facilitation at these conferences because that is so much more impactful for the emerging leaders. So if there are certain topics or conferences that you definitely want to engage in, which you'll see in the updated program guide, it's a great opportunity for you as a sponsor to get out in front of the group. It could be developmental for you, but also supports your goal in ePeople of focus on the how. So I'll just throw that bait out there for you all. I will also be sending a quick note out to some of you who have a couple of emerging leaders that still have not registered for the May conference. So we use that just as a verification to make sure we have everybody. And sometimes they do go from east to west and west to east. So that'll be a chance just to kind of wrap up any loose strings on making sure we know where everybody will be so that they can get their assessments wherever they need to. So that is all I have for us today. I'll just pause and see anybody from my emerging leader working team. It's Anne-Marie Harris, Mike Calderella, Katie Manis, and Katie Sanders. If you guys have anything you want to jump in and add, feel free.
I'm good, Kim.
Thanks, Mike. All right, any final questions or comments from the sponsors? All right, hearing none, I hope everyone has a fabulous rest of the day. Thanks so much for joining. End of call.